So, going back to Takilma. So, when we moved to Takilma, we didn't talk about this at all, what it was like. Um, the summer of, during 1969, pretty much 68, 69, whatever, lots of young people were moving out of the cities and had this ambition to live in the country. There was this exodus of people who had turned on. It was the Timothy Leary thing of turn on, tune in, drop out. There were people who were dropping out, and they were finding new lifestyles after they'd gotten stoned and had different visions of life. And a lot of people wanted to live in communal settings or in rural country settings who had grown up in the cities. And so there's this like flood, really, of people moving out of the cities. It was interesting. A certain, young 20s, just dropping out of universities, first forming communes in the cities, in places like Berkeley, and all over the country, even in places like Kansas City. I remember once stopping in some trip across the country in Kansas City and finding a communal house and a bunch of hippies there, in the middle America. Anyway, so when we got to Kilma, it was the spring after the first influx of hippies had arrived, and the people who had been living there before a lot of them had gotten there during the Dust Bowl and were refugees from Oklahoma when in the Depression and the Dust Bowl, and they found this haven in rural Oregon where they could afford a piece of land or whatever, find a piece of land and live subsistence lifestyle. So they had essentially been the hippies of the 1930s, right? But they had a different ethic and different mindset. And so when this new group all of a sudden was pouring into their communities, there was incredible resistance. They were very upset. These people were not God-fearing, they were strange, they dressed strange, they were dirty and disgusting and vile, and took drugs and had sex with each other and animals and whatever. I could just imagine the vision of the local people. And so they formed in our community. We lived in Takilma, but in the surrounding county. The local town was Cave Junction, and there was the river that ran through there was called the Illinois River. So it was the Illinois Valley, this little place. So the local merchants formed an organization called the Illinois Valley Betterment Society. And the Illinois Valley Betterment Society was instituted to stop the influx of hippies. That was their goal. Right? It was almost like the Ku Klux Klan in its kind of, focused, instead of focusing on Catholics and Jews and blacks, right? They focused on hippies. And so they printed these signs that said, "We do not solicit hippie patronage," and put it in every store in Cave Junction. It wouldn't, it was like the hippies were the new blacks, the new niggers in this town. It was weird.
So shirts, right? I think shirts, shoes required or something.
Yeah, but but that was not as overt as "We do not solicit hippie patronage." I remember that sign so well. It was so direct. I was like, wow, that's wild. And you had, of course, here we were the intellectuals and the, people who came from much better upbringing than the people who lived it. These people who were Okies, who had no education, and so it was really funny. to see this and to experience it. And we had just gone through the whole civil rights movement. We'd grown up in civil rights movements and freeing the blacks, and getting the vote for the. And here we walked in. We were now the new blacks. It was like, whoa, this is so funny. On one level, it was a joke to us, and on another level, it was a little scary because they actually were pretty. These people were violent. Some of them, hostile and violent. And the police were hostile and violent. We had incidences where the police were shooting at us.
Why?
There was this one time, a bunch of people were down at the river. They were swimming, and they were swimming naked on the river. I mean, nobody's down there. This is the only people who were there with these people. Jumping from the rocks into the water and splashing around. They weren't bothering anyone. There were no houses around. You couldn't see them from the road. And this cop came down and started shooting at them. Right? I mean, they ran into the woods, and he was chasing them and shooting at them, trying to kill them. It was. We eventually, that particular incident resolved because we went and got the ACLU, right, to come in. And the ACLU filed a whatever it is, a legal thing, and forced they got it. They forced charges against these cops, and got the venue changed to some other part of Oregon because you couldn't try them there, and they tried them and found them guilty and put them away. That was a turning point, in relations when the people realized you can't do this. They just thought it's our place, this is the Wild West. We'll just shoot them. We'll get rid of these hippies.
So if the sign said we do not solicit hippie patronage, did you guys not go into those stores?
They wouldn't serve us. Mm-hmm. Right? And so we had to go further away. We'd go, to the next county. Our county was crazy. And even as part of it, there was a medical clinic in town, right, with a doctor, and he had the sign on the door, right? So you couldn't go to the doctor. If something happened, you couldn't go to the doctor. He wouldn't let hippies in. It was pretty weird. So we learned to make do, and we'd go somewhere else. But one of my first experiences, though, with that was when we first got there. We had the Peugeot, and I decided to go into town one day. We first moved to the farm. We were staying there. I decided to go to town, and I pulled in town to do something. And I was parked right across from the government building, which had the police station and the courthouse and stuff like that, in a little government building. And when I pulled out, I made a U-turn and headed the other direction down the road. Well, I went a quarter of a mile, and the police car pulls up behind me, pulls me over. He said, "You made a U-turn. I'm going to arrest you." Okay. So he gave me a ticket. And I was a little why did he, it turned, the whole thing seemed odd. So I went to the courthouse and asked them, what do I do about this ticket? I don't think it's fair. I said, well, if you don't want to pay it, then you have to go to the judge. Here's the date. There's a court date. You go see the judge and tell him what you think. I said, okay, I'll do that. I didn't want to pay that ticket. So it was a couple of weeks later, So I went to the court, and I figured, I'd get up and talk to the judge and tell him what happened, and he'd decide whether I deserved it or not.
How did you dress?
I dressed reasonably. I don't know. I really don't know. So I went in, and there were a few other matters for them to take, and it was at the end of the thing, and he called me. And then he called the jury in. I said, wait. The judge called in a jury, right? And then the judge called in the prosecuting attorney, right? And they started having a trial. I thought I was going to go say, Judge, blah, 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 I didn't mean to do that, and I didn't think I really made a U-turn there, and why did he, pick me out? I, you know, I went through this parking lot. I was at a corner where you could do this. And all of a sudden, there's a real trial going on. And I'm not prepared. I don't have a lawyer. I was just like, this is incredible, right? What kind of justice system is this one, right? I just got, wrangled into being on trial here. So I kept my cool. I said, okay, fine. The prosecuting attorney put out the charges and, had the officer come up and he had him testify, on an oath and did this whole thing. And then they brought in witnesses. They started bringing witnesses in, right? Who testified. Whoa, this is wild. So after they finished with that, the judge turned to me and said, you're a witness or whatever. It's like Perry Mason. I'm like, wow, I've watched enough Perry Mason movies. I know how this goes. Now I was getting into it. So I cross-examined the officer. Blah blah blah, and I went through a cross-examination of the officer and got him to, how did he happen to see? Where was he? How did he happen? He was inside the building. He saw me through a window, right? So I quickly drew a sketch of the thing, and where was he sitting in the building, and where are the windows, and what was the angle that he was at, and where was my car, and blah blah blah. And then I brought up the other witness and asked her where she was, and she was sitting somewhere else inside the building, blah blah. And how did she see the angle from where she, And I got them to totally contradict each other, and the judge threw the case out. Just on contradiction, just whether I did the thing or not, I pulled it off. And this was like the first week we were in Tabackman. Right away. This is my introduction to Tabackman. Just getting pulled over. So I got off. So that was the end of the trial there, and we're going out the door, and the officer comes over to me. He says, "Fucking asshole, I'm gonna get you." I was like, did anyone hear that? Judge, did you hear? Right? This guy threatened me in the courthouse, in the courtroom. He was going to get me. And that was before the shooting. And then they started with this whole shooting people. And one day we're at the farm, and all of a sudden police cars came driving up our driveway, and I figured it was him, and I just took off. I ran into the woods, and I figured he was coming to get me.
What was it?
I don't. They were coming to investigate about something, ask about something. But I figured this. We're in the South here now. I'm a black boy in the South. I looked at the woman wrong. I better get out of here before they lynch me. So, but it was a little scary. It was interesting. So because of that whole scene, of this segregation, essentially, right? We had no medical care. Well, in our valley, a bunch of people had settled during that spring and stuff, the previous winter and that spring, and there were people of all different sort of backgrounds. So our group, we were all pretty smart. We all had college educations, and some of them had gone to law school or med school or whatever, and we were a fairly sharp group of people. The people who came to Magic Forest Farm. And, but there were other groups where they weren't so smart, and people lived in couples or in, strange pairings or, small communes, big communes, every sort of combination you can imagine. And a lot of them were not the brightest, or knew basic sanitary concepts or whatever, So a lot of people were living on the river, and they were shitting in the river and drinking out of the river and washing their clothes in the river. They were living as if they were in a third world country somewhere. And so all of a sudden, there was this outbreak of hepatitis A, which you get from contaminated water. And it was all hippies who were getting it. All these people on the river were turning yellow. And it wasn't a good scene, really sick. So at some point, we got in touch with the state epidemiology department, and the state epidemiology about this problem, that there was hepatitis. There was a hepatitis outbreak. So the state epidemiology department sent down gamma globulin to protect everyone who was at risk and exposed to the hepatitis, so we could stop the epidemic. And so they sent it to the county health department, and the county health department inoculated everyone who wasn't a hippie, everyone around the area. They brought in everyone, and they protected all the local people and refused to give it to any of the people who were really at risk. Right? I mean, they sent enough to cover the whole county, and these people wouldn't give it to the hippies. And so we realized that at Magic Forest, we figured out what was happening. We saw the scene and figured out what was happening. So we called back up to the state. We talked to the head epidemiologist at the state, and he was a young guy who'd just come back from the Peace Corps, and was in Africa, and he said, "I'll be down tomorrow, don't worry." So he came down with another batch of gamma globulin, and he stayed with us at the farm. And we got along, and we had a great time, He appreciated what we were doing. He was into, it was like being back in Africa, He loved it. He was back in the third world here in Tabackman, and he inoculated everyone. He looked at the scene, we showed him what was happening with the segregation problem, and that we had no health care. And he said, you got a problem here. He says, you need to start a clinic. You guys need your own health care, obviously. If these people are going to discriminate here, then you have to have your own. I'll go back and I'll find you somebody up in Portland to come down and work with you. So he went back up there and gave us a call, and he said he found somebody. Found this guy, Jim Shames. Jim finished his medical school training and his internship, and he was waiting to start his residency. He wanted to do a residency in psychiatry, but he had to wait 6 months or whatever to start it. It was out of sequence. And he was interested in this project, and he would come down and visit us and see how we got along. So Jim came down next week and stayed with us and got stoned with us and loved the place, and said, sure, we'll do this, and we'll start a little clinic, and the Tabackman free clinic, and so that's what happened, and Jim stayed and did this thing, and he was going to stay for 6 months, and we'd find somebody else to continue it. So Jim came down and started ministering, and he brought some materials with him from Portland. He hit up different hospitals for bandages and, like pieces of old equipment and laboratory equipment.
I remember some big pieces of equipment down in the first clinic down the road.
Yeah.
Big, weird
right, we'd have
X-ray machines.
We had all this stuff. Just bring in all this crazy stuff. Nobody wanted. And
I remember this X-ray machine.
And we had a centrifuge and microscope and all. We were able to do a very primitive clinical lab where we could really do stuff. We could do blood smears and cultures and sensitivities and stuff. So we set up this clinic. It was really cool.
What was your involvement?
Well, when it happened was when it actually, I was there maybe right at the beginning, but then I wasn't there during the initial steps when it really started, because that was, I think, when I went to West Virginia looking for land. It may have happened during the winter with it must have, during the winter with, it's interesting.
It wasn't winter.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying when I was away in Guatemala, it must have really come together while I was in Guatemala. So, so I wasn't directly involved with the real getting together of the thing. But once I came back, I got very involved. I just loved it because I loved the idea of being medicine. I mean, I sort of always wanted to be a doctor. My parents always wanted me to be a doctor. I was named after a doctor. I loved blood and guts and learning stuff. So I had never taken biology in college, but I loved biology. And I jumped right in when I came back. So it was when Shoshana and I came back, I guess, for that year when we were building our house and stuff and getting ready to go to West Virginia. It was that time when I got involved with the free clinic, and it was already up and running. Primitive, but up and running, and growing all the time, getting more stuff and getting more sophisticated. So during that time, originally I was the only one who delivered babies. When we first got there, I delivered the first babies. So I had that little experience there. But then, by the time I came back and the free clinic was going, they were delivering babies, lots of babies, and they really had it together. So Jim was, boned up on obstetrics, and he was comfortable delivering babies, and some other people moved into the area, and some of them were nurses, so they got involved and helped, and then they started training essentially PAs or, physician assistants, sort of everyone else who was interested could come in and hang out in the clinic, and we'd have classes, and people would watch somebody doing something. And that's where I really started the understanding of see one, do one, teach one, because that's what we did. So you would watch somebody do a procedure, sew up somebody's hand, and the next time one came in, you'd sew up the hand, and the next time you'd show somebody else how to sew up the hand, right? And that's how we did it. And the same thing with the laboratory. Watch somebody, somebody would do a culture and sensitivity, you'd watch it, and next time you'd try one and teach one to somebody else. So pretty soon there was a whole cadre of these people doing stuff. And I was right in the middle of it. I really liked doing the laboratory stuff. I loved working in the lab. And there was another guy who had been a lab tech who was there, so he really knew how to do it. We got some books, study stuff. And pretty soon we were doing all these births, because everybody was young and pregnant, it seemed like. And so we were doing a lot of births, but they really developed a system for this whole obstetrics, which was, as soon as somebody got pregnant, they would start coming to the clinic. As soon as they knew maybe they're 3 months pregnant, they know they're pregnant, they start coming to the clinic every Wednesday. They'd come to the clinic, we'd have our prenatal class. And people would just sit around in a circle and talk and tell their experiences and learn about the body and pregnancy and the hormones we're doing and blah, blah, blah. We'd go through all this stuff, and everyone would be examined. Everyone would examine each other. Everyone would learn how to listen to the heartbeat and how to, the baby's heartbeat, and how to do bimanual examinations, and how to use, how to do internal exams and speculums and look at the cervix, and women were all looking at their own cervices in mirrors. It was this, liberation of the body, taking back and making pregnancy a healthy, normal thing instead of a disease, which it had become in our society. And it was very empowering. Everybody loved it. And so there'd be all these women, these healthy, pregnant women on Wednesday or whatever day it was, having a great time together. And then, if anything went, and we'd run laboratory on all of them, check their blood, make sure that they didn't develop diabetes or high blood pressure or this. When do complete exams, everybody would get an exam every week. And if anything happened to any of the women, the slightest thing, something that would put them at risk for having a complicated birth, right? They would no longer be eligible for a home birth. They would be on a list of, they'd have to have a higher level of birthing technology. And if that wasn't the case, then fine, they could have their home birth out in their teepee in the middle of nowhere, and the crew would come they'd get notified. So someone would call, someone would be the messenger, and say, so-and-so's in labor, down O'Brien Road out in the, take 2 rights and walk a mile, out in the teepee there. And Jim and one of the nurses and a couple of the PAs and the midwife, midwife kind of people who had learned how to, would hike out there and take stuff with them, equipment that they needed, and they'd deliver the babies. And everything went beautifully. It was amazing. We eliminated any possibility for problems.
If there was a chance of complication, then would the birth happen at the clinic or at the hospital?
It might happen at the clinic. If it was a minor complication, we might do it at the clinic. Or we had made friends by that point with this gynecologist, obstetrician in Medford, okay, who was a tertiary care unit. What he liked doing was complicated births. That's what he did, emergency complicated births, okay? And he was willing, on a minute's notice, to take our problems. We made an arrangement with him. If something went wrong, we'd call him, send the case in, he'd be there, he'd take care of it. That was the deal.
You had to send people to Medford?
Yeah.
Which is how far of a drive?
An hour and a half. But we had backup at least.
Right.
We could get him on the phone, he could tell us what to do, he was 100% into what we were doing. And eventually we wound up getting a vehicle, an old van, and turning it into the birth mobile. And it had an incubator in it, and it had emergency equipment, oxygen, stuff. And that would go to the birth site. So outside the TP would be sitting this emergency vehicle. If something went wrong, you pop them into there, and we had a support system for the mother and baby in the vehicle. You drive them for the hour and a half.
You remember what it said on the door of the vehicle?
We deliver. It was very cute.
But so, that was already after you were already living in West Virginia and going back for the summers.
It could be. I'm saying eventually.
That's when they didn't have the.
No,
vehicle
not at
when
first.
You left. Yeah.
Not at first, but eventually it kept growing.
Yeah.
And eventually it got very well,
right.
put together.
Right.
It was funky, but it was good.
Right.
It was really good. I mean, so you could support somebody who was having a bleed out, and we'd have IV equipment in the van and the whole thing. You could get them there.
Right.
And keep them alive and get them to the thing if you had to. Never needed it. I mean, I don't think it was ever used, really. The only time there was ever problems, a couple of problems happened. The only time that happened was when somebody hadn't gone through the clinic, right? Somebody would show up in town that day and they're in labor, right? We don't know them, right? You can't say no to them, kind of. You have to deal with the situation as it is, and those are the ones that went bad. The ones that we screened eliminated all the problems. I remember one, it was a terrible one. This couple came in, and there was, we didn't know them, just pulled into town, crazed out people, and they're in labor. Wound up delivering the baby and was anencephalic, had no brain, right? So we're sitting there, horrible thing. You have to tell them that their baby's not going to live. It's alive, but it has no brain. It's like a deformed thing. So we didn't know what to do. So we kind of left the baby out in the field first. We just wrapped it up and just left it alone. Figured we would starve to death. There was no way for it to survive. And nobody was up for doing anything that was going to kill the baby. But if we just didn't support it, it would, in its own time, it would die. So this poor baby was dying, there. And all of a sudden, somebody said, "Well, couldn't we use the organs for transplants for somebody? Couldn't we donate that?" So, right. All of a sudden, wait a second, get the baby back. Get the baby, try to warm it up and feed it and do, then we try to reverse, this half a day or a day of trying to starve. Oh, it was a horrible thing. You didn't know this one, huh? It was and then we rushed it to try to find who would, who could use this baby as, for transplanting, for using the heart of the kidneys or something, for some other baby. We got the parents' permission. We called the emergency guy in Medford. And he said, "Yeah, sure, bring." I don't know. We rushed the baby in the birth mobile off to Medford. I don't know whatever happened. I think didn't work out. It was a bad scene.
Okay.
Everyone was bummed out. I mean, in this scene. So I got a lot of practice delivering babies and that kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I was really into the whole scene. Jim Shames never left. After 6 months, he was part of the Magic Forest Farm. He's still there. 40 years later, whatever it is, the 40th anniversary. He's 39 years later. Jim Shames is still part of To Kill 'Em a Free Clinic. I think he's moved off of the farm to Ashland at some point, but he's still involved there. Never went back for psychiatry. And the clinic probably is still there and still functioning well. So when Shoshana and I left the farm that next, whenever it was, the following year, after spending most of a year, or half a year, working in the clinic and building my house and doing that stuff, Shoshana must have mentioned to people in West Virginia, when we started meeting people, and telling our story to friends or to people, she probably told them about the free clinic and about how I delivered lots of babies. And Shoshana liked delivering babies, though she had not much experience and little skills in terms of feeling comfortable actually doing, anything medical. But she would tell people. So all of a sudden, people were asking us if we would deliver their babies. Right? And they're coming down and talking to me about delivering their babies. And I'm thinking, I don't know. In Oregon, we had this wonderful system, as I just described, very safe. We had plenty of backup. We had, people with skills and equipment, communications equipment. We had two-way radios to talk to people. Here, I'm sitting here alone, with no electricity, no water, no sewage, no, in the most primitive possible situation, with no equipment. And people ask me if I'll deliver their babies. So I was a little reluctant. And I remember, so there was this must have been the spring, early summer of the first year in West Virginia. And you guys had just come, or at that time, I don't know if you were there for the first baby. You were, probably. You guys were with us. You and Noah were with us when the first one happened. And so the one couple came, and they were very sweet, and they said, would you come? And I said, well, okay, we'll come and help you and watch and do what we can.
So that meant they were going to have a home birth.
They were going to have a home birth.
And they wanted you to be there.
They wanted me. They didn't want any doctor there, and, would we come? No matter what, they weren't going to have a doctor. I thought, I guess it's better if I'm there than if nobody's there. They have no experience at all. They don't have a clue what they're getting into. At least I'll be there, and, what the hell. So we arranged with Kenny, our neighbor.
Right, so you're 3.5 miles down the road,
right,
with no
electricity.
Vehicle, no electricity, no telephone.
Right. I had a vehicle parked, I had my big truck parked up at Kenny's house. Right? And so we made this arrangement that Kenny had electricity, water, telephone, all that stuff. So we made an arrangement that the people could call Kenny. And Kenny would turn his hi-fi on and point the speaker down the valley towards us, right? And play Sergeant Pepper. Very loud. He'd turn it up as loud as he could, and he'd play Sergeant Pepper. And that would be a signal that I needed to come up to his house. Okay? That was our communication system. So one day we're sitting around doing whatever we're doing. All of a sudden, off in the distance, I hear Sergeant Pepper playing. And I remembered, almost forgotten, what that was about. Why am I hearing music in the, it's so quiet where we live. There was only birds and stuff, and hunters shooting their guns off once in a while. And then all of a sudden I hear Sergeant Pepper, and I go, oh, okay. So we got together, and we got you guys together, and went up to Kenny's and found out that this people in Sandstone, where I think it was, were in labor and wanted us to come. We got directions, and we drove to their house. And she delivered the baby. It was kind of a little slow, and she had trouble getting the afterbirth or whatever. But it worked out. It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad. I was a little exhausted and a little stressed out from the experience, but also a little high from it, because being involved in births always is, is a rush. But we delivered the baby. Baby was fine, mother was fine. We packed up. We were all blissed out. We went back to our place. These other people came by one time. They were a little more mashugana. I remember them. They were a little mashugana. They said, they heard that we knew about births. They didn't want us coming to their birth. They didn't want anybody being at their birth. They definitely didn't want any doctor, and they weren't going to go to any hospital. They were just going to do it themselves. I said, well, what do you know? Nothing. Okay. What would you like to, I was trying to figure out why they came to see me. Well, we want, maybe you could tell us something. Maybe you could teach us a little something. So I said, well, the best thing I can teach you, I guess, is what could go wrong. Okay? And nothing goes wrong, it's fine. And you'll have your baby, people have been having babies forever. Usually they've had experience, with other people having babies in the past, and their mother having a baby or whatever, and watching people have babies and they have some clue, but whatever, you think you can do this, well, we read a book. Okay, fine. So I said, here's the deal. If you're in labor, and the labor goes for more than 36 hours, that's not good. Okay? That's not a normal situation. And the likelihood is that you're going to need help, real help. So if you go in labor and you see that it's going beyond 36 hours, you need to get to the hospital. Okay? That's the rule. Okay? You don't do that, you're going to die. There's a good chance you're going to die. Okay? So I see that's the best thing I can tell you. Okay? That's all I told them. So a few days later, a week later, whatever, Sergeant Pepper plays again. And there was one other one, actually, because we had a friend, his friends, who had been at the Seder, maybe Stephen and Stephanie. They already had a daughter, and so they had a birth, they knew about births a little bit. And the daughter was probably I don't know, maybe 5 years old or 7 years old or something. And they were kind of spaced out hippies, but they were friends of ours. They were involved with the island of the Red Hood, which by this time had moved and was now in another county, much further away from us, a couple hours away. And so when they said that they were pregnant and they wanted me to deliver their baby, I said, well, at least you've had some experience, you're a proven mother. You can have babies. I mean, some people, they have problems, and they're going to wind up with a cesarean. They're not going to get a baby out, So if you at least have proven that you can do it, that your pelvis is going to work and your body knows how to do this well, it's not as bad. So I wasn't as concerned with them. And we arranged, because they were so far away, and it was a second birth, and second births could be precipitous, it could happen very quickly. I might not make it 2 hours to where they are by the time they call me. I said, why don't we meet at our mutual friend's house, which is exactly halfway, at Mark's house, okay? And it's clean, it's a nice place, we all like Mark. Mark would be happy to do this, it'd be fun for him to have a birth in his house, And there were phones, it would be easy. So we put that one sort of on hold, that they would call, and they would call as soon as she went into labor, because I didn't know how long we were going to have. So as soon as you know that you're in labor, give me a call. Call Kenny, tell him, and I'll get going, meet you there, and we'll do a nice thing. So I had those two people, two sets, that were out there, on hold, sort of. The one I sort of forgot about because I wasn't going to be involved in it. They didn't want me there. They told me specifically, we don't want you there. So the Sergeant Pepper's happened. And actually, this time, I went up, and it was Stephen and Stephanie. And Stephen and Stephanie call. And I get on the phone and I talk to them. I said, okay, so just went into labor. Nah, we went into labor last night. You know, we've been on this for 12 hours. Like, oh no. Oh no. You got to get moving now. You know, look, you know, jump in the car and get to Mark's, will you? And I'm going to jump in the truck and get to Mark's. I said, look, just as a thing, you know, just take it easy. Breathe, do plenty of breathing. Unless you really can't hold back, don't push. You just, you know, if you can breathe through the contractions, don't start pushing, because you may start pushing before the baby's ready and you'll tear, so you get into a problem. So if you know, if you have to push, but if you can avoid it for as long as you can, okay? And we'll get there as fast as we can. So we grabbed you guys. Did you go to that birth? Yeah. So we grabbed you guys, jumped in the truck, and took off to Mark's. We had to stop somewhere and get some food and root or something, I don't know. And got there, and I'm pulling up in Mark's yard, and I jump out of the truck, and I hear screaming. I just heard screaming, oh no, you know? And Stephanie is screaming and screaming. I run in, and there's this scene in Mark's living room. And there's Stephanie on the floor with her legs spread and knees up, you know, and she's screaming. And there's Stephen braced against the wall, pushing the baby back in, not letting the baby out, and telling her not to push. And he's pushing the baby back in, holding the baby in, not letting it out. And I push him out of the way, you know, get out of here, you know. What the hell is going on? You know, that's not what I said, you know. Okay, guys, let's figure out what's going on here. I said, the baby is right there. You know, the head is halfway out, and he's been holding it there. So I quickly, as best I can, I check this whole thing, and I'm feeling the baby, and I'm trying to feel around the baby. I feel this big mass there, you know, this soft mass next to the baby, and see it kind of hanging out of the birth canal, and I say, what is this thing? You know, I'm trying to gather my wits, and I'm like, yeah, just drove like crazy to get there. I'm shaking, and I don't know what's going on, and I finally quickly deliver the baby. The baby is blue. The baby doesn't look good at all. It needs to be resuscitated, and I got working on the baby and trying to, you know, get the baby to breathe and stuff. It's just a long time to get the baby to breathe, And I look at I'm trying to deal with the two scenes, you know, the baby and the mother. And I look back at the mother, and I realize that this mass that was with the baby's head is the placenta.
It already separated.
It's already been delivered, right?
Wow.
And this poor baby is sitting there with no placenta attached to the mother, and I don't know how long this has been.
So was the baby okay?
The baby was not okay. The baby, I mean, I resuscitated the baby.
Yeah.
The baby looked fine. You know, we got the baby breathing and stuff. But I watched that baby grow up.
Yeah.
And he was something wrong. He was beautiful. He was this beautiful child. Both parents were handsome. You know, they're good-looking people. And the child was very, very nice, a boy. But he was very odd and slow. He was never. There was something.
Brain damage from lack of oxygen.
Oh, I understand. No, I understand what happened. You know, I never said anything. You know, to the parent. I didn't try to lay a trip on them and stuff. But I knew that, you know, this crazy thing that had happened. You know, and I'd been in on the scene of this. Right? They misunderstood what I'd said. They didn't follow the directions that I thought I was very clear about. And as a result, this baby was hurt. And I felt bad. I was not happy about the whole thing. And thinking, you know, this wouldn't have happened at Magic Forest. You know, that's not how this is supposed to go. Right? We'd never let that happen. So I wasn't happy about this whole thing. I was thinking, you know, no more of this. Okay? This is not right. And I've gotten myself into something that I shouldn't be doing. And then we went back, and immediately, it seems to me, Sergeant Pepper played again. Got back, we were exhausted from that scene, but hi, once again, got back, and Sergeant Pepper plays. And one of you wasn't feeling well at this point. One of you had a cold or something. Yes. And I go, oh no, what is this? And I go up to Kenny's again. Run up to Kenny's. It's these other people who don't want me there. Now they want me there, right? I talk to them on the phone. What's going on? What do you mean? You know? Well, we've been in labor for more than 36 hours. You know, and we don't know what to do. I said, you're supposed to go to the hospital. We're not going to go to the hospital. I said, you got to go to the hospital. You know, I told you. In 36 hours, you got to go to the... No. Would you come over? We're not going to go to the hospital. Maybe you could come over and help us. I was like, oh, God. You know, what should I do here? What's the moral thing to do here, right? You know, I tried to get them to go to the hospital. Don't they understand? What are these crazy people? But they're going to die, right? I'm going to leave them alone and say, no, I'm not going to be there. You know, maybe I can go there and convince them to go to the hospital. Maybe I can do something. You know, I have to, you know, I'm involved in this thing now. I have to do something. And we left you guys with Kenny because it was just too much already. We were over it. And I didn't think this was going to be a good scene. You know, knew I wasn't going to walk into a, you know, a sweet, beautiful birth scene here. We're going into a, you know, into a war zone. And one of you was sick. I didn't want to bring you with us, and you were exhausted from just in this other birth. So I didn't even have, the vehicle wasn't even working. I didn't have the keys. The keys were back down 3.5 miles down the road, right? I forgot, I didn't expect to go anywhere. I forgot the keys. Like, oh God, I forgot the keys. So Kenny gave me the keys to his car instead of me spending a half hour, you know, running back and getting the keys and running back, you know, because time was of the essence, obviously. We were in trouble. And I raced off to where these people lived, which wasn't nearby. It was near Lewisburg. It was south of Lewisburg. So it took me an hour to get to their place. And I get there. Shoshana went with me. And I walk in, evaluate the scene, try to get a handle on what's going on. I walk in, and there's this guy, and his wife is on the bed, and she's just going like that, okay? And he's sitting there next to her, and around him are piles of paper, literally this mound of paper, little note, like a notebook, pages of a notebook, and it's all times. He's been timing the contractions now for 36 hours, right? Every 3 minutes, he's writing down what time she starts a contraction, ends a contraction. And there's like, you know, these stacks and stacks of papers. I'm looking at, gee, what is going on? And she looked, you know, I said, okay, let's all just calm down, guys. You know, I said, why don't I examine her and see what's happening? I try to be very cool. So I do a bimanual exam, and I look at her and I feel her, and she's dilated about 2 centimeters. And we have 36 hours of paper on the floor, and we're 2 centimeters dilated. We haven't even started labor yet. You know, she hasn't eaten anything or drank anything. She hasn't gotten out of this bed, and she's been huffing and puffing and hyperventilating for 36 hours. She's a total wreck. She is, you know, beyond, right? So I take him aside, try to very calmly explain to him that what's going on. Because he thinks she should be delivering any minute now. And I'm thinking, we haven't even started this process. We're in the, I don't know what's going on here, but we're missignaled on this thing here. So I told him, we gotta just calm down. Everybody needs to eat. She needs to eat. She needs a lot of fluid. We gotta get her juice and get her hydrated. You guys gotta get up and go take a walk. Okay? You guys gotta get out of this house. This is not labor. Okay? Whatever's going on here, this is not labor. Let's chill out and, you know, recenter here. So he was very resistant to this because he thought it should be over now. You know, what do you mean? We just worked our asses off. You're telling me we haven't started? So I got them calmed down, got them to do what they needed to do, and refocused on it. And then, but she was having contractions. So I started, you know, we tried to work with her, get her to walk around a bunch, I don't know, send them off to go make love or something, do something to get them out of this, what they were doing. And so eventually she started having more contractions that were going to be a little more productive. But it wasn't progressing. It was just very slowly. We're there for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I'm trying to tell them, we really ought to go down to the clinic. There's a clinic nearby. The public health service had a clinic, and I knew the doctor there. We knew who he was and stuff. And I called him, and I talked to him, and I explained what was happening here. And he said, "Oh, sure, come down, blah, 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 blah." So I convinced them to go to the clinic. I thought, whew, we'll take him to the clinic. I'm out of here. Right? I go to the clinic, and the doctor's so mellow. And he examines her and says, "Oh, yeah, it's very early labor, and he agrees with everything I said, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, why don't you go back home?" It's too early to be here. You're not really, you got a long ways to go. I was hoping he was going to send her the other way, send her to the hospital, get her out of here. These people are crazy. Okay, so I had to go back with them. We went back to the house again. And our other friend was there, this friend we had met, whose name I can't remember, this woman. She was friends of theirs and the clinic. And she was sort of the go-between in this whole thing. That's how they found us, maybe. It was through her. So she was up there. And so by then, she was helping. And eventually, she started to go into, a little more progressive labor, 3 centimeters and 4 centimeters and 5 centimeters. But it was hours and hours. And the whole day went by. And then it was nighttime again. It was like, we're still there. And then and they're still doing this thing and still keeping track of numbers. And I mean, it was like 60 hours now. We're 60 hours into this thing, according to their count. I'm just rolling my eyes. I'm exhausted. I'm trying to get a nap in. And I'm talking to her, and at about 60 hours, and they're getting closer, and I can feel, and I'm examining her, I'm saying, it feels funny in there. The bony structure is just odd, but I don't know enough. I wasn't a doctor, and I didn't know enough to really know what I was feeling, but it just didn't seem like the ones I'd felt before. All of a sudden, she tells me, "Yeah, neither my mother nor my sister was able to deliver vaginal." I said, "Really?" That would have been a no-go at Tabackman. There's no way, if you had a history that your family has a pelvic dysplasia, has some pelvic problem, inherited pelvic problem, you don't come to the Tabackman clinic for delivery here. I said, "Oh, no." She said, and I was in a car accident last year and I broke my pelvis. By this time the baby was already engaged. I mean, I had the head in the pelvis, and I'm trying to figure out, but it didn't fit. I was trying to figure out what was going on, because that's when I noticed there were bones in the way, right? I had my hands in there, and I'm feeling this thing, and the baby's head is like stuck in the pelvis, and she's telling me this story. And I'm just like rolling my eyes thinking, I'm up Schitt's Creek, right? I got a half-engaged baby here, and there's no way we're going to get this baby out of here now. Now I know. And I can't convince them to go to the hospital. No, we're not going to go. I said, we're in trouble. So I just went at it and pulled this baby out. I mean, I did essentially a forceps delivery with my hand. And, from inside, and grabbed onto the head and pulled it. And just pulled this baby out through the birth canal that it wasn't going to come through. Mm-hmm. And got it out. And the baby was fine. I delivered this baby. The baby was reasonable. Gave a little breathing, slapped it, seemed fine, turned around, blood gushing out of the mother. She hemorrhaged, right? She was like, I tried to get, and so then I wanted to deliver the placenta. Her cervix then clamped down, boom, on the cord. And she's bleeding, and I can't get the placenta out. Right? And she's totally exhausted, dehydrated, hemorrhaging. And I look at her, and she passes out. She goes into shock, right? And I grabbed her, right? I just grabbed her, ran out the door, threw her in the back of the truck, these people's truck, jumped in, and drove. I mean, I was not waiting for...
You had already cut the
cord.
cord?
Yeah, the cord is hanging out of the mother, and I can't get it out. And
right.
And I knew, we're up Schitt's Creek. This woman's going to die on me here now.
Right.
Right? I got the baby out. Baby's fine, you know. Don't have to worry about the baby. And I just threw her, literally, in the truck. They had a pickup truck. I threw her in the back of the pickup truck, and jumped in and drove down to the clinic. Called the clinic. Before, had somebody call the clinic. One of the people sitting there, the other woman, and told them we're in trouble, right? And I'm on my way. That they needed to meet me there, and they needed an ambulance, to meet me at the clinic. So I got to the clinic, put her in, put her on oxygen, gave her IVs, she did better. She was, they stabilized her at the clinic with fluids and stuff, and gave her, Pitocin and stuff to clamp down the uterus, stop the bleeding.
That's what you do for hemorrhaging is Pitocin?
Yeah.
There's nothing else you can do?
You have to get the placenta out, because it can't clamp down. That's the problem.
Right.
After you deliver the placenta, the cervix goes into, into spasm and stops the bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
It gives itself a tourniquet.
Right.
Pressure. So they got her stabilized right away. We had it together. The doc was there. The nurses were there. And everyone was calm there. They took care of it. I'm standing there like exhausted, right? The ambulance comes up, they transport the mother into the ambulance, the father jumps in the ambulance, and they take off. And I'm standing there with the baby.
Oh, you took the baby with you?
Well, yeah.
You and the father took the baby with you to the clinic?
Everyone met us at the, Shoshana and the girl came, whatever. This other woman came down, to the clinic, in the other vehicle, whatever, And I'm standing there holding this baby, and there's no parents anymore, and there's nothing. I wasn't even thinking about it, just like, what's the deal? So I wound up giving the baby to the other woman who was their friend, and she took it and found somebody to nurse the baby, some friend, and the mother was fine. They took her to the hospital, they dilated her, took care of it. She came home the same day, and everything turned out fine.
Mm-hmm.
I finished with that one and said never,
Wasn't there a breech birth also, one of these?
I don't think so.
Really?
Unless the first one was.
The one at Marky's house wasn't?
No.
The first one I think was a breech.
It could have been, but we did it.
I remember you told me that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It could have been.
Okay. Anyway, so go on.
Because the first one was hard. I realized it was a hard birth, but we pulled it off, and I realized I was over my head in it when we first did it.
Right.
But everything came out okay. The mother was fine. The baby was fine. Mm-hmm. It was more complicated than I had expected, but we pulled it off, and it was fine.
Right. Okay, so you said
but the next one was a disaster, and the third one was a near fatal disaster.
Right.
And I'm saying, don't you, to Shoshana, don't ever tell anyone that I deliver baby. I'm not doing this anymore. This is crazy. This is bad stuff. We should never do this. But at that moment, at that time, it was funny because the other guy who I told you about, Stephen Schwartzman. I almost got his name there. He spells it a funny non-Jewish way. Anyway, Stephen, who was Kenny's partner in the land up above us, that year had found out that there was this new medical school in the next town, in Lewisburg. There was an osteopathic school that had opened, this little teeny medical school. And he was in the first class. He decided to go to medical school. And he got in the first class. So he was off in medical school. And I'd run into him every once in a while, and he heard about what I was doing. He says, you ought to go to the medical school. Are we done? Mm-hmm. No. So, you ought to go to the medical school. I'm sure you could get in, and then you could be a doctor, and then you could deliver these babies, blah, blah, blah. And I started thinking, there's no way, how am I going to go to medical school, right? I flunked out of RPI, right? I dropped out of architecture school. I've never had a biology course. I've been out of school for 12 years or 10 years or whatever it is, It's, however long it was, Maybe it's not that long. It was a while, I don't know anything about going to school. I don't have any money. How do you go to medical school, right? We're living on $100 a year, I'm going to go to medical school. This is crazy. He said, no, 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 you ought to check in on it. He says, you know, they have this thing where you could join the Army or the National Health Service, you know, the Public Health Service, and they'll pay for your schooling and give you a stipend. You can live on it, and you just give them back a year for every year that you go to school. And you could do it. You know, you could really do it, Albie, you know. So I had thought about it and started to mull about that possibility. And at one point, so I went and I got a book about osteopathy. I was curious, you know, what this thing was, because it was this osteopathy. I didn't know what osteopathy was. And it sounded interesting, actually. It sounded fairly interesting. And then I found that there was this little state teachers college, sort of, you know, that had been a state teachers college, and now is a liberal arts college, not too far from where we lived, Concord College. And I went down there, and I thought, oh, I'll talk to the admissions guy and see, you know, what the deal is. It was something to do. Might be interesting. So I went and talked to him, and I found out, in terms of the medical school, that essentially I had almost all the prerequisites to go to medical school, but I never had organic chemistry, and I never had biology. So all you need is, essentially, the only requirements to go to medical school are 1 year of biology, 1 year of general chemistry, 1 year of organic chemistry, 1 year of mathematics, and 1 year of physics, and anything else you want, right? And I'd had all the others. I had tons of mathematics, tons of physics. I'd had chemistry, or regular chemistry, managed to pass it, sort of. Even though I fell asleep on the final that time, I managed to get through chemistry. But I'd never taken organic or biology. So all I really needed was 2 courses. But it would take me 1 year, so I'd have to take the full year of each of those courses. And when I decided to do this, it was in the winter. When I finally made the decision, it was going to be the spring semester. So they actually only gave the second, it was a small college, they only gave the second semester of organic chemistry that semester. They didn't have the first. You couldn't really start in the middle of organic chemistry. It's not, you know, it's a full year course. And I could start anywhere in the biology because it didn't matter. They had plenty of biology classes, so there's always a first. And so I decided I thought about going to school, essentially.